I woke up to the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the faint antiseptic scent that clings to every hospital room. The clock on the wall read 7:46 a.m. I blinked twice, feeling the weight of anesthesia still fogging my brain. A nurse noticed me stir and hurried over, her rubber soles squeaking softly on the tile. "Welcome back," she said with a practiced smile. "How do you feel, Mrs. Harris?" It took a second to remember that was me, Clara Harris, 48, owner of a small-town flower shop in Milford, Virginia. My head ached, my stomach twisted. I think I'm okay," I murmured. The surgery was supposed to be routine. A gallbladder removal, in and out, nothing serious, nothing that should have changed my life. But within the next 24 hours, everything I thought I knew about safety, about love, about home, would crumble. The nurse adjusted my IV, then said softly, "The doctor will be here in a few minutes. He wanted to speak with you personally." That was odd. Usually post-op briefings were quick. "You're fine. Take your meds. Rest up." But something in her tone, the stiffness around her eyes, made my chest tighten. 10 minutes later, the door opened. Dr. McAdams stepped in. He was a calm, gray-haired man in his 60s. Always polite, always steady. I'd trusted him for years. He closed the door behind him, didn't speak right away. Then he walked closer, glancing at the security camera in the corner of the ceiling. He reached up, pulled the plug from the wall. The red light blinked off. That's when my heart started to race. "Clara," he said quietly, "I need you to listen to me very carefully." I nodded slowly, my mouth dry. He slipped a folded note from his coat pocket and placed it in my hand. "Don't react," he whispered. "Just keep your face calm." My fingers trembled as I unfolded the note beneath the sheet. In uneven, urgent handwriting, it read, "Don't go home. Act normal. Run." I looked up at him confused. "Doctor, what?" "Shh." He raised his hand. "Someone's been asking about you. Someone who shouldn't know you were here. I don't have time to explain. Just trust me. When you're discharged, leave quietly. Go anywhere. Just not home." I stared at him, my pulse hammering in my throat. "Is this some kind of joke?" His eyes softened. "I wish it were." Before I could ask more, he turned to the door and left. I sat there, gripping the note so tightly it wrinkled. For the next hour, I kept glancing around, half expecting him to come back and say it was a mistake. But he didn't. By noon, I was cleared to leave. The nurse handed me a discharge form, a bottle of painkillers, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Outside, the autumn air bit my cheeks. Milford looked as it always did, quiet, clean, the kind of town where everyone knows your business, and your front porch flowers bloom in perfect rows. I sat in my car, the hospital parking lot nearly empty, and unfolded the note again. "Don't go home." "Why?" I pulled out my phone, thinking maybe to call my husband, Mark, but something in my gut said, "Don't." Mark had been distant lately, short-tempered. Ever since the flower shop started doing better than his auto parts business. Our marriage had changed. He'd started drinking more, staying out late. There were nights I'd catch the faint smell of perfume that wasn't mine on his shirts. but danger. No, that couldn't be it. Still, I didn't drive home. Instead, I went to the one place I always felt calm. My shop, Petals and Posies. The moment I unlocked the door, the familiar scent of lavender and fresh roses wrapped around me. Everything was in its place. Ribbons hung neatly. Vases gleamed. Invoices stacked on the counter. Safe. Normal. Or so I thought. As I stepped behind the counter, I noticed something off. My appointment book was open. A page I hadn't touched since before surgery. And there, scrolled across the bottom margin in messy black ink. Should have listened. My heart stopped. I hadn't written that. I turned slowly, scanning the shop. Nothing looked disturbed, but the bell above the door hadn't rung since I came in. Someone had been here. I grabbed my keys, locked up, and backed out of the shop. My hands shook as I drove. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't go home. I ended up in a small diner off Route 19. The waitress, a woman my age named Judy, poured me coffee without asking. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said kindly. I forced a smile. Rough morning. While she refilled another table's cups, I took out my phone and scrolled through my texts. Nothing unusual, except one unread message from an unknown number. It had arrived 10 minutes after my surgery ended. It said, "She's awake. What do we do?" I nearly dropped my phone. I looked around the diner, every face suddenly strange, every movement too sharp. Judy returned with my bill. "Everything okay, honey?" I nodded quickly, left cash on the table, and hurried out the door. That night, I checked into a motel under my maiden name, Clara Mills. The room was small, dim, with floral curtains and the faint hum of a vending machine outside. I tried to sleep, but every sound, every creak, every passing car made me sit up. At midnight, my phone buzzed again. Another text. Same number. "You shouldn't have left." My chest constricted. My thumb hovered over block. But before I could press it, a second text came through. "Check your purse." I froze. My purse sat on the nightstand. Slowly, I unzipped it. Inside, my wallet, receipts, lipstick, and something new. A small folded photograph. It was me, taken from behind, walking into Petals and Posies. The timestamp said, 2:14 p.m. Today. I hadn't told anyone I was going there. My breath caught in my throat. I jumped up, locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle. My phone buzzed again. "We told him you'd run." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, I decided to go to the police, to show them the text, the photo, the note. But when I arrived at the station and told the officer my name, he frowned. "Clara Harris, we already spoke with your husband last night. He said you're in Richmond recovering." My heart sank. "What?" He nodded, flipping through his notes. He filed a missing persons report. Said he thought you might have wandered off after anesthesia. He sounded worried. Mark never worried about anything unless it involved money. "Did he say where he was staying?" I asked. The officer shook his head. "Just that he'd call when he heard from you." I left the station feeling hollow. Someone was lying, and the only person who could tell me why The only person who knew about that note was Dr. McAdams. But when I called the hospital, the receptionist hesitated. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Dr. McAdams isn't available. When will he be?" A pause. Then quietly, she said, "He passed away last night. Car accident on Route 7. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. He was dead. Less than 12 hours after, warning me not to go home. And suddenly, the note made perfect, terrifying sense, because whatever was waiting for me back home had already started looking for me. I didn't remember driving back to the motel. I just remember sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror across the room. The woman staring back didn't look like me anymore. Her eyes were red, her hair tangled, her hospital bracelet still clinging to her wrist. She looked like someone who'd seen a ghost. Maybe because she had. Dr. McAdams was dead, and that meant his warning wasn't paranoia. It was a death sentence. For him, and maybe for me. I grabbed my purse and dumped it on the bed. Phone, wallet, keys, receipts, the photograph. I looked again at the photo. Me, walking into my shop. The timestamp circled in red ink. Someone close. Someone watching. I thought of Mark. He was probably sitting at home right now, pretending to be a worried husband. He had that charm, that small-town politeness that made everyone think he was the kind of man who'd mow his neighbor's lawn for free. But I'd lived long enough beside him to see the cracks, the quiet rage when things didn't go his way, the way his jaw would tighten when I laughed too long with another man at church, the way he'd look at me like I was property, not a partner. I used to think he was just proud. Now I wasn't sure what he was. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Same number. "You shouldn't talk to the police again." No name. No signature. Just that. My hands trembled as I typed back. "Who is this? What do you want?" No reply. I shut the phone off, heart pounding. Whoever it was, they were following me. They knew what I did. They knew where I went. I tried to think rationally. If Dr. McAdams was right, if Mark had something to do with it, maybe the doctor found out something during the surgery, something he wasn't supposed to see. But what could a surgeon see inside me that would make someone want me dead? I leaned forward, gripping my head in my hands. The room buzzed with silence. That kind of silence that presses on your chest until you can't breathe. That's when I remembered the folder. The nurse had handed me a small manila envelope when I was discharged. "Your surgical notes and imaging." I pulled it from my bag, tore it open. Inside were copies of charts, scans, and one photo that didn't look like it belonged. It was an image from my abdominal scan, except in the lower corner, faintly circled, were letters and numbers that weren't medical at all. It looked more like a code. R7AH93, Delta. I frowned, flipped through the rest of the pages. The same code appeared again on the printout of my gallbladder tissue report. I didn't know what it meant, but someone clearly didn't want me to see it. I snapped a photo of the code with my phone and Googled it. Nothing, just gibberish. Then I noticed something strange. At the bottom of one scan, in tiny print, the hospital's name had been crossed out and replaced with another, Morrow Research Facility, I didn't remember being taken to any research facility. I was admitted to Milford General. Why would a private research lab's name be on my medical images? Something was very, very wrong. I threw my things into my bag and decided to leave town. Go anywhere. Richmond maybe. But when I got to my car, there was a white envelope tucked under the windshield wiper. Inside was a single photograph. Grainy, black and white. A picture of my parents' old house. And on the back, written in neat handwriting, "You're looking in the wrong place." That's when I froze. My parents' house had burned down 20 years ago, but the land still existed. Up on Hollow Creek Road, an hour outside town. Nobody ever went there anymore, and yet somebody wanted me to. I drove there. It was stupid, reckless, but curiosity, or maybe fear, had already taken the wheel. The farther I went, the emptier the road became. The trees thickened, branches scraping my windshield. Fog curled around the tires like fingers. When I finally turned onto the dirt path leading to the old property, I saw something that made my stomach twist. A light, faint, flickering through the trees. Someone was there. I parked the car and crept closer, every crunch of leaves underfoot echoing in my ears. The air smelled like damp wood and gasoline. The house was mostly gone. Just a few charred beams and the skeleton of the porch. But in the middle of the ruin stood a metal shed. New, silver, spotless. A padlock hung from the door. I knelt, peering through the crack. Inside were boxes stacked neatly on shelves, each one labeled with a name, handwritten in black marker. I felt cold all over when I saw mine. Harris, Clara, R7AH93, Delta. My fingers shook as I tugged the lock. It didn't budge. I looked around, grabbed a stone, and smashed the latch until it snapped. Inside, the air smelled of chemicals. I opened the box with my name. It was filled with documents, photos of me at different ages, hospital records, even a birth certificate, but not mine. It said, Morogenetic Study, Subject 17, and beneath it, a picture of my mother holding a newborn tagged with the same code, my code. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. None of it made sense. Was I part of a research study, something connected to that facility? Before I could think further, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside. Headlights swept across the trees. I ducked behind the shelves, heart pounding. A car door slammed. Then a voice. Calm. Familiar. Clara. Mark. He stepped into the light, holding a flashlight. He looked around like he already knew what was inside. Clara, honey, he called softly. Come on out. You shouldn't be here. I pressed a hand over my mouth. He moved closer, shining the beam across the open box with my name on it. He sighed. You weren't supposed to find this. I felt my blood run cold. He stepped toward the shelves, touching the folder with my name like it was a fragile relic. I told them this was too risky, he said. But you always had to dig, didn't you? I stepped out from behind the shelf, voice shaking. What did you do, Mark? He didn't flinch. He just looked tired, like this was inevitable. You were never supposed to know, he said quietly. The surgery, that was their chance to monitor the results, to confirm the genetic sequencing You were one of the successful ones. My head spun. What are you talking about? He smiled faintly. You're not just some flower shop owner, Clara. You're a test subject. You were born from a government-funded genetic study. Morrow's project. I only married you to keep tabs. To make sure the results stayed stable. I felt sick. Stable, I whispered. You married me for that. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. Don't make this harder. If you come with me, I can fix this. They can fix you. But if you keep running... A noise outside interrupted him. The low growl of another engine. Headlights flashed again. Mark's eyes widened. They followed me, he hissed. Before I could ask who, he lunged forward, grabbed my arm. Come on, Clara. I shoved him away, running for the back of the shed. But before I could escape, a gunshot ripped through the air. Mark froze. A dark bloom spread across his shirt. He staggered, dropped the flashlight, and fell to his knees. A figure stepped into the doorway, holding a pistol. A woman's voice. Calm. Controlled. Mrs. Harris. You shouldn't have come here. The flashlight rolled, landing at her feet. She wore a black coat with a silver badge. Not police, but something close. She pointed the gun straight at me. Your husband was supposed to bring you in quietly, she said. Now we'll have to do it my way. I stared at her, chest heaving. Who are you? She smiled faintly. My name doesn't matter, but you can call me Agent Rowe. I work for Morrow. Then she raised the gun higher. But before she could fire, the shed lights flickered. Then everything went dark. The last thing I heard was her voice in the dark. Run all you want, Clara. You'll come home eventually. When I came to, the world was silent. The air smelled of ash and rain. For a moment, I didn't know where I was, until I saw the faint orange glow in the distance. The shed was burning. My hands were cut. My hair smelled like smoke. But somehow, I was alive. I stumbled into the woods, gasping for air. Behind me, I could still hear faint popping sounds. Boxes bursting open in the fire. The documents, the photos, the proof. All going up in flames. Mark was gone. Agent Rowe was gone. And I was once again completely alone. I walked until my legs gave out, collapsing near the edge of a dirt road. The night was cold and endless. I pulled my jacket tighter, pressed my forehead to my knees, and whispered into the dark. Why me? Maybe I said it to God, maybe to no one, but the silence that answered felt heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. Hours passed, maybe more. When I finally looked up, dawn was breaking, the sky bleeding pale gold through the fog. A truck slowed to a stop beside me. The driver, an older man in a baseball cap, rolled down the window. You all right, ma'am? I nodded weakly. Car broke down, I lied. He didn't press. He just motioned for me to get in. Come on. Town's just ahead. I climbed in, the seat creaking under my weight. We rode in silence. The radio played soft country tunes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt safe. He dropped me off at a diner on the edge of town. Coffee'll help, he said kindly. I thanked him and went inside. The waitress looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. Sweetheart, she said, you okay? I just nodded and took a seat in the corner. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered. Eyes hollow, face pale, but beneath it all, a spark, something alive. I stirred my coffee, and for a brief moment, I thought maybe I could start over. Maybe I could disappear, change my name, move somewhere new. But then I felt it, that hum again, that faint static buzz at the base of my skull. It was back. I looked down. The spoon in my cup was vibrating, barely perceptible, but real. And in that moment, I understood. They hadn't implanted anything during the surgery. It had always been there. A trace, a signal, something that made me different. I remembered what Mark said. "You were one of the successful ones." A chill crawled through me. I left cash on the table and walked out. The world outside looked normal. People crossing streets, cars honking, sunlight washing over rooftops. But to me, everything felt unreal. I didn't know who to trust. The police would never believe me. And if Morrow was real, if they had reached beyond my small town, hiding might not be an option. That's when I made a decision. If I couldn't hide, I'd expose them. I took a bus to Richmond. Bigger city, new faces, no questions. Checked into a small boarding house under the name Eleanor Rhodes. Bought a cheap laptop, a burner phone, and started digging. And oh, what I found. Morrow Research Facility wasn't a hospital wing at all. It was a privately funded genetics program from the late 1970s, partnered with government biotech contracts. Their focus: behavioral response to embedded neural transmitters. There were files, old newspaper clippings, court records, lawsuits that vanished overnight, whistleblowers who died in accidents. And then I found the list, a scanned page from a leaked document. Subjects of Phase 3, Neural Integrity Trials. 30 names, all children born in the same year, all adopted by different families across the state. I scrolled slowly, and there it was. Harris Clara, subject 17, but below mine, one more caught my eye. Roe Dana, subject 18. My breath hitched. Agent Roe, she wasn't my enemy. She was like me. The pieces fell together. She hadn't come to kill me that night. She'd come to stop Mark from bringing me back in. She wanted to end it. I sat back shaking. The truth wasn't simple. It was tragic. And then the laptop screen flickered. A message appeared. White letters on black. Stop digging. Clara, you're not ready to remember. I froze. Then another line. Come to the pier at 10 p.m. Bring no one. For a moment, I considered closing the computer and running. But part of me, the same part that had survived the surgery, the betrayal, the fire, needed to know. That night, the air by the docks was cold, salty, still. I waited under a flickering streetlight, every sound making my heart skip. And then footsteps. Agent Rowe emerged from the shadows, hands raised. No gun this time. Her face looked tired. Human, you shouldn't have come back, she said softly. I swallowed. Neither should you, she gave a small sad smile. I guess we're both bad at following orders. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the water slapping against the wood. Why? I asked finally. Why do this to people? to children. Ro looked at me, eyes glassy. We weren't supposed to feel pain, Clara, or fear. We were designed to obey, to adapt. But something went wrong. We became too human. Her voice cracked. They called it a defect. I called it mercy. I felt my throat tighten. Then help me stop them. She shook her head. You can't stop them. But you can disappear. Really disappear. They'll think you're dead. I can make that happen. I stared at her, the ocean wind stinging my face. And what about you? She smiled faintly. Someone has to clean up the mess. Before I could answer, she handed me an envelope. Inside, a passport, cash, and a single photograph. It was us. Me and Ro, side by side, two little girls in hospital gowns, maybe 4 years old, holding hands. The same code written under both names. R7AH93 Delta. Tears blurred my vision. You remember this? Ro's voice trembled. Every night, and then distant sirens. She turned sharply. Go, Clara, now. I hesitated. Every instinct screaming to stay, to fight, to understand. But her eyes said it all. This was goodbye. I ran. Through the alley, through the fog, until the sound of sirens faded. By morning, I was on a bus heading south. The ocean stretched endlessly outside the window. For the first time, I didn't look back. I found a small town by the coast. Quiet, unassuming. Opened a tiny flower shop. Named it Second Bloom. People came in for weddings, funerals, anniversaries. And I learned to smile again. Sometimes, late at night, I'd still feel that hum. Faint, like a heartbeat buried deep in my bones. But I didn't run anymore. Maybe it wasn't something to fear. Maybe it was just proof that I'd survived. And every so often, a stranger would come into the shop. A woman with a long coat, a faint smile, and eyes that reminded me of home. She'd buy lilies, leave a generous tip, and say, "Take care, Clara." And I'd nod quietly, because I knew it wasn't goodbye. It was a reminder that forgiveness doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it just means living anyway.